The parable of the barren fig tree introduction. Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right on the surface, but deep down you know something isn't working? You attend services, know the songs by heart, can even quote verses in casual conversations. But when you look in the mirror of your soul, you realize nothing has truly changed. Fear. It's a truth that's going to bother a lot of people. It's possible to be inside the church and completely outside of God's purpose. It's possible to have all the religious performance polished and be spiritually bankrupt. And the worst part, God knows. He always knew. While everyone around you applauds your impeccable Christian appearance, God is looking for what truly matters and isn't finding it. You know what's scarier? That there may come a moment when he simply stops looking. When divine patience, which you always assumed was infinite, reaches its limit. When the axe you thought would never really be used is finally raised. The parable of the barren fig tree that Jesus told is a cute little story to pass the time. It's a red alert flashing in your face. It's God saying, "Look, I invested in you. I planted you in the right place. I gave you everything you need. But where's the result? Where's the real transformation? Where's the life that makes a difference?" Before you think, "Oh, this doesn't apply to me," let me ask you some uncomfortable questions. When was the last time you gave up something you wanted to serve someone? When was the last time you made a difficult decision because it was the right thing to do, even knowing it would cost you dearly? When was the last time someone looked at your life and thought, "Wow, this person really knows God, not because of your words, but because of your actions"? If you're hesitating to answer these questions, then this message is exactly for you. But here's the good news hidden in the middle of this hard message. If you're rereading this now, there's still time. We're still in the part of the story where the vine-dresser is interceding, where Jesus is telling the Father, "Wait a little longer. Let me work on this person." You are not alone. God is with you in this process, offering another season of grace, another chance to move from barrenness to fruitfulness. And this but is huge. This chance comes with expectation. It comes with a clear understanding that something needs to truly change. Not that superficial New Year's change that lasts 2 weeks. Not those emotional promises made at the altar that evaporate in the church parking lot. But deep, radical, permanent transformation that makes you a completely different person. What you're about to discover through this parable will shake everything you thought you knew about grace, mercy, and Christian life. It will show you that God works in silence, preparing the ground of your life, but that this invisible work has a deadline. It will reveal that the tears God sees when you cry alone are precious, but they need to lead to real change, not just temporary emotional relief. It will explain why when God speaks to the heart about transformation, He's not making a suggestion, He's issuing a summons. Most important, it will equip you with practical understanding of how to move from barrenness to abundant fruitfulness before it's too late. Because here's the naked truth that nobody wants to tell you. There is a too late, even within divine mercy. There is a moment when the treatment time ends and the accountability time begins. The question that will define your eternal destiny isn't where you planted in the vineyard. You already were. The question is, what are you producing with everything God invested in you? And if the honest answer is nothing significant, then pay close attention to what comes next, because your spiritual life could literally depend on it. The fig tree that bore no fruit, the man who sought and found nothing. There's something deeply human about the scene of someone who plants, cares for, and waits. Just imagine the situation. A man walks through his own vineyard, that piece of land he knows like the back of his hand, and approaches that specific fig tree. It's not the first time he's done this. It's a third consecutive season that he's arrived there with expectation. Looks at the branches, examines the leaves, searches among the verdant foliage for some sign of fruits, and nothing. Absolutely nothing. The tree is there, beautiful, taking up space, receiving sun and water, but when the time comes to deliver results, it simply doesn't respond. It's like that employee who shows up to work every day, clocks in, but produces nothing of value. Present, but absent at the same time. And look, this hurts more than we imagine, because it's not just about fruit, it's about wasted purpose, unrealized potential, life without real meaning. This man says frustration is real. And UVA probably felt something similar in some area of your life. Think about it. How many times have you invested time, energy, resources in something or someone and simply saw no return? That relationship you nurtured for years that never truly flourished. That professional project in which you placed expectations that never got off the ground. That promise you made to yourself to change, to grow, to be different. But that remains just a promise. The fruitless fig tree is us in so many moments of life, taking up space, but not fulfilling the purpose for which we were created. And then comes the uncomfortable question, does God look at my life and find fruit, or does he only find beautiful foliage without substance? When God speaks to the heart asking for change, do I really change, or do I just pretend I'm going to change? The interesting thing is that this fig tree had no obvious excuse for being barren. It wasn't in dry soil, there was no lack of care, there was no evident plague. It simply bore no fruit, period. And you know what that means. That's sometimes the problem isn't in external circumstances, but in something much deeper, something internal, spiritual, that prevents fruitfulness even when everything around seems favorable. It's possible to be in church every Sunday, know the Bible from cover to cover, sing the hymns with emotion, and still be spiritually barren. It's possible to attend all the services, participate in all the events, have sharp gospel language, and still not produce what really matters: genuine transformation, practical love, character molded in Christ's image. The issue isn't just being planted in the right place, but allowing that place to produce in you what it was designed to produce. True. 3 years is enough time for any healthy fig tree to start bearing fruit. 3 years is enough time for anyone who really wants to change to start showing signs of transformation. But this fig tree defied logic, defied natural expectation, defied the purpose of its own existence. The owner of the vineyard, tired of going there and coming back empty-handed, reaches that inevitable conclusion we so fear hearing: cut it down. It's not cruelty, it's pragmatism. Why keep something that doesn't fulfill its function? Why preserve what only takes up space without adding value? Here's where the story gets interesting. Because you are not alone, God is with you. Even when it seems the axe has already been raised to cut you down. Even when everything seemed lost in the life of that barren fig tree, there was someone about to intercede, someone who still saw potential where others only saw waste, someone willing to give one more chance when no one else believed. Order to cut down 3 years of waiting and land occupied uselessly. 3 years may seem like a short time in eternity, but in practical life, 3 years is an eternity of patience. Think about it. 3 years is enough time to train a technician, for a child to go from diapers to school, for a relationship to mature or end, for a business to take off or fail. Stay. 3 years of waiting is no joke. It's emotional investment. It's renewed expectation each season. It's hope tested repeatedly. And this man, the owner of the vineyard, didn't go there just once and give up. He came back. And came back again. And came back once more. Each spring, the same walk, the same ritual of searching, the same expectation of finally finding what the tree should naturally produce. But the disappointment repeated like a scratched record. And look, there comes a time when patience reaches its limit. Not from lack of love, but because prolonging what doesn't work is wasting resources that could be invested in something fruitful. The phrase "cut it down" did you come from the owner's mouth out of whim or unjustified impatience? It was a logical decision, almost mathematical. 3 years of investment, 0 return. Any manager, any leader, any minimally responsible person would reach the same conclusion. But there's a part of this phrase that's even more revealing. Why should it use up the soil? Notice the depth of this. It's not just that the fig tree was unproducing, it was taking up space that another productive tree could use. It was consuming water, nutrients, sunlight that could be feeding something fruitful. Was there, imposing perhaps, verdant even, but completely useless for the purpose for which it was planted. And this is a slap in the face of our spiritual comfort zone, because we can be taking up space in church and family, at work, in the world, without adding real value, without producing what we were called to produce. God saw your pain, That silent pain of knowing you have more to offer but can't deliver. He sees when you feel exactly like this fig tree, present but unproductive. There are people who live years orbiting around purpose without ever really diving into it. It's like that athlete who trains, but never really enters the field, or that musician who studies music theory for decades but never composes a song, or that writer who collects empty notebooks because they never write the first line of the book they carry inside. The uselessly occupied land is the perfect metaphor for a life that exists but doesn't live, that breathes but doesn't inspire, that is present but makes no difference. When God speaks to the heart about this, He's not being cruel, He's being honest. He's saying, I created you for more than this. You are designed to bear fruit, not just to exist. The order to cut down sounds harsh, but it's necessary in certain contexts. Think about how many things in your life need to be cut down because they read just taking up space without producing anything good. That habit that paralyzes you, that toxic friendship that only drains your energy, that addiction that consumes your time and health. That pattern of negative thinking that has kept you stuck in the same place for years. Sometimes, God sustained me exactly through the cutting, the pruning, the removal of what was preventing me from bearing fruit. The order to cut down the fig tree wasn't just about destruction. It was about wise management of resources. It was about not wasting the precious space of the vineyard with something that refused to fulfill its function. And here comes an uncomfortable truth. God is patient, but He's not negligent. He waits, but not indefinitely. He offers chances, but not without limit. Divine mercy is deep as the ocean, but it doesn't validate permanent spiritual laziness. Comfortable stagnation, facade Christian life that never translates into real fruit. The vine dressers. Intercession. The request for one more chance, just when the sentence was about to be executed. When the axe was already being sharpened and the fig tree's fate seemed sealed, someone raises their voice. The vine dresser, the one who works directly in the vineyard, who knows each plant intimately, who gets his hands dirty in the soil every day, positions himself between the condemned tree and the inevitable judgment. Sir, leave it alone for one more year, he asks. And this isn't an empty intercession. It's not a romantic request based on cheap sentimentalism. It's a commitment. It's the vine dresser saying, I'm going to invest my time, my effort, my knowledge in this tree. Give me one more chance, and I'll do everything in my power to make it bear fruit. You know what this means for us. It means that even when you feel God has given up on you, there's someone interceding on your behalf. Even when everything seemed lost, there's a voice defending your cause before the divine tribunal. This image of the vine dresser is one of the most beautiful and comforting in all of Scripture when you understand what it truly represents. Jesus is this vine dresser. He is the one who places himself between us and God's perfect justice and says, Father, one more year, one more season, one more opportunity. He doesn't deny that the fig tree is barren, doesn't minimize the gravity of the situation, doesn't pretend everything is fine when it isn't. He acknowledges the problem, but offers the solution. And this solution involves personal work, involves direct involvement, involves getting hands dirty. The vine dresser doesn't just ask for time, he asks for time with purpose, time accompanied by action, time that will be used strategically to reverse barrenness. It's like that friend who not only defends you when everyone criticizes you, but who also commits to helping you truly change, to grow, to overcome. The intercession has power because it comes from someone with authority and commitment. The vine dresser isn't a stranger commenting from afar. He's the one who actually works in the vineyard, who knows the soil, who understands agriculture, who knows what's possible to do. When he asks for one more year, the owner of the vineyard listens because he trusts him, because he respects his knowledge, because he knows he wouldn't make this request if he did ungenuinely believe in the possibility of change. And look, you are not alone. God is with you through this constant intercession of Christ, even when heaven is silent, but God is working behind the scenes, preparing the ground for your miracle. Jesus is there interceding. He asking for one more chance, assuring the Father that he will personally take care of you, invest in you, work on you until fruit appears. This isn't abstract theology, it's spiritual reality happening right now as you read these words. But there's something crucial we can't ignore in this intercession. It comes with conditions. The Vindresa doesn't ask for eternal tolerance of barrenness. He asks for a specific year, a determined period, a deadline with beginning and end. Leave it alone for one more year, until I dig around it and fertilize it, he says. Translating, give me enough time to implement the necessary changes, to apply the appropriate treatment, to create the ideal conditions for fruitfulness. And then comes the realistic part. If it bears fruit, well, if not. After that, you can cut it down. The intercession buys time, but doesn't eliminate responsibility. Grace creates opportunity, but doesn't validate permanent laziness. Jet. God heard your prayer when you cried out for one more chance. But this chance comes with the expectation that you will cooperate with the process, will allow the work of transformation, will respond to divine investment with real change. Faith in Jesus. Christ is on to passport to spiritual complacency. It's an invitation to active partnership in your own transformation. The ultimatum, bear fruit or be cut down. Now we arrive at the point where mercy meets responsibility, where grace intersects with accountability. And if it bears fruit, well, if not, after that you can cut it down. These words carry a weight that can't be ignored, a seriousness that can't be diluted with cheap optimism or distorted prosperity theology. B. The ultimatum is clear. There's a deadline, there's an expectation, there's a real consequence if change doesn't happen. And look, this bothers a lot of people because we've been trained to believe that grace means absence of standards, that unconditional love means infinite tolerance of spiritual mediocrity, that God is so good there would never be real consequences for our choices. But the parable leaves no room for this illusion. The vinedresser interceded. Time was granted. Care will be applied, but the expectation remains. Fruitfulness, it's not optional, it's essential. This ultimatum isn't divine cruelty, it's divine clarity. It's God being honest about how things really work in His kingdom. About any area of life. If you don't study, you don't pass the test. If you don't train, you don't win the competition. If you don't work, you don't receive salary. If you don't take care of your health, the body pays the price. Cause and effect is a universal law that God established in the very structure of reality. And spiritual life is no magical exception to this rule. When God speaks to the heart about change, about growth, about fruitfulness, He's giving you privileged information about what He expects, about what's necessary for your permanence in the place of blessing. It's like a sports coach who calls you before the season and explains clearly, look, you have enormous potential, but you need to show up in the games that matter. If you perform, you stay on the starting team. If you don't perform, you go to the bench. It's not a personal threat, it's functional reality. The most intriguing part of this ultimatum is that it places responsibility where it should be, on the fig tree itself. The vinedresser did his part, interceded, cared for, dug, fertilized, created all conducive conditions. The owner of the vineyard did his part, granted time, maintained patience, provided resources. Now only one variable remains in the equation, the fig tree's response. Will it cooperate with the treatment? Will it absorb the nutrients? Will it allow the roots to deepen? Will it respond to the investment with real transformation? And applying this to your life. God sustained me through so many impossible situations. Jesus interceded countless times. The Holy Spirit worked tirelessly in me. But in the end, I need to respond. I need to allow transformation. I need to cooperate with grace. I need to choose fruitfulness. Grace doesn't eliminate free will, it empowers it. Mercy doesn't remove personal responsibility, it creates conditions so you can exercise it successfully. After that, you can cut it down. These final words aren't to scare you, they're to awaken you. They exist because God respects you too much to force you to change against your will. And because He loves His kingdom too much to fill it with people who just take up space without adding value. It's a hard truth, but liberating when you understand. You are not alone. God is with you in this process, providing everything necessary for fruitfulness. But the final decision to respond or not to the treatment is yours. And you know what's the good news hidden in this ultimatum? It's that it exists. If there were no real possibility of fruitfulness, there would be no ultimatum. The The ultimatum presupposes that change is possible, that transformation is within reach, that you can go from barren to fruitful. The vine dresser wouldn't have asked for one more year if he thought it was a waste of time. He saw something in the fig tree worth the additional investment. God sees something in you worth all the patience, all the care, all of Christ's continuous intercession on your behalf. What the fig tree represents, Israel and each individual. When Jesus told this parable, he wasn't talking about agriculture, literally. Every parable is a code, an encrypted language that carries profound truths wrapped in simple everyday stories. And the fig tree, specifically, had a very clear meaning for the Jewish people who heard Jesus that day. Throughout the entire Old Testament, the fig tree appears repeatedly as a symbol of Israel, the chosen nation, planted by God in a promised land, surrounded by special care, destined to be a light to the nations, to demonstrate to the world what it's like to live under divine blessing and government. But something had gone wrong. Israel had received the law, the prophets, the miracles, God's manifest presence in the temple, and yet was spiritually barren when Jesus appeared on the scene. It had religious appearance, correct ritual, right theology in words, but didn't produce the fruit God expected. Genuine justice, practical mercy, love for neighbor, humility before the Creator. But here's where it gets personal, because the parable isn't just about a distant nation 2,000 years ago. It's about you. Each of us is also a fig tree planted in God's vineyard. We're placed in a specific family, in a specific city, in a specific generation, with specific talents, specific resources, specific relationships. All of this is the equivalent of being planted in fertile soil within the Father's vineyard. And the question that won't be silenced is, what are you producing with all of this? When God looks at your life, does he find only religious foliage or real spiritual fruit? You know all the evangelical jargon, attend the right events, post nice verses on social media, but where's the genuine transformation? Where's the love that translates into action? Where's the faith that generates courage to make a difference in the world? Where's the character that reflects Jesus even when no one is looking? The fig tree represents that constant tension between potential and reality, between what you should be and what you really are. Think about how many people live mediocre lives, not because they lack ability, but because they lack willingness. Not because resources are lacking, but because commitment is lacking. Note, because God didn't invest in them, but because they don't correspond to the investment. It's like that athlete with privileged genetics who wastes talent because they don't want to wake up early to train. Or that brilliant student who fails because they prefer video games to studying. Or that entrepreneur with revolutionary ideas who dies poor because they never move from planning to execution. The barren fig tree isn't a victim of impossible circumstances. It's in good soil, receives water, has sunlight. The problem isn't in the environment, it's in the tree. And applying this spiritually, how many times do we blame God, the government, family, church, society for our barrenness? When in reality the problem is our refusal to cooperate with available grace. Israel also represents that terrible danger of thinking that election guarantees automatic results. That being chosen dispenses with the effort of producing fruit. We are children of Abraham, they said, as if spiritual genetics were enough. We have the temple, they boasted, as if geographical location guaranteed interior transformation. We know the law, they prided themselves, as if theological information substituted for practical obedience. And we do exactly the same thing today. I was born in an evangelical family, as if spiritual heritage were transferable. I was baptized, as if external ritual produced internal change. I've attended church for decades, as if time warming the pew substituted for transformed life. Faith in Jesus Christ isn't genetic inheritance, isn't cultural identity, isn't a religious club membership card. It's a living relationship that produces visible fruit. And when you understand that the fig tree is you, that the ultimatum applies to your personal life, that God saw your pain but also sees your responsibility, something changes. You stop being a spectator of the parable and become its protagonist. The question stops being what happened to Israel and becomes what's going to happen to me. 3 years of waiting don't happen by chance. 3 years aren't the result of divine forgetfulness or celestial distraction. They're deliberate strategy, intentional patience, mercy applied consciously and planfully. When the owner of the vineyard says he's been looking for fruit for 3 years, he's revealing something profound about God's character. He doesn't give up at the first disappointment. He comes back again, and keeps coming back, creating multiple opportunities for transformation to happen. How many times you cried repentant at a Sunday night service, and by Monday were already repeating the same destructive patterns? Spirit. This isn't divine weakness, it's strength of love we can barely comprehend. God's patience isn't passivity, it's pedagogical strategy. He knows that real change doesn't happen overnight, that deep transformation requires time, that genuine fruitfulness is a process, not an instant event. It's like a father teaching his son to ride a bicycle. He doesn't let go of the seat on the first try. God works in silence this way too, while you think nothing is happening. But in Abraham's faith, maturing him for the weight of being father of nations. But there's a limit. And this limit isn't arbitrary, isn't capricious, isn't God waking up in a bad mood one day and deciding to end the party. Imagine a company that keeps an unproductive employee indefinitely while overloading others who work. It's unsustainable. It's unjust. It's bad management. God is patient, but also wise. He waits, but not indefinitely to the point of compromising the entire system. And you know what this means for you? There is patience, but not patience that validates eternal accommodation. There is mercy, but not mercy that eliminates consequences. The opportunities God creates are too precious to be wasted. God coming to seek fruit, golden opportunities to respond to grace with transformation. But there's a crucial detail that can't be ignored. Wasted opportunity doesn't come back. That person God placed in your path to bless, you may not be there next season. That door that opened may close. That time of visitation may pass. The tears God sees when you recognize this aren't in vain. They read the beginning of genuine repentance that leads to real change, but they need to be followed by action, response, visible fruit before patience reaches its natural and wise limit. Spiritual fruitfulness, love, justice, and good works. Now let's get straight to the point. What exactly is this fruit God seeks so insistently? Because if we don't understand what He wants, how are we going to produce it? And look, it's not complicated, but it's deep. Spiritual fruit isn't church attendance, isn't accumulated biblical knowledge, isn't quantity of prayer hours recorded in a nice devotional journal. These things can be tools, means, useful disciplines, but they're not the fruit itself. The fruit is character transformation that manifests in relationships. It's love, that stops being an abstract feeling and becomes concrete action. It's justice that leaves political discourse and enters daily practice. It's good works that don't spring from religious obligation, but from a heart genuinely transformed by grace. When Paul lists the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, he's describing character, not performance. He's talking about who you become, not what you pretend to be on Sundays. True love is the first and most important fruit, but needs to be understood correctly. It's not that Hollywood romantic movie love. It's not a feeling that comes and goes according to the moon or mood. It's a firm decision to seek the other's good, even when it costs you dearly. It's that love that makes you forgive someone who hurt you deeply because you understand that holding grudges only poisons your own soul. It's the love that leads you to confront a friend who's destroying themselves, even knowing they might distance themselves from you. It's the love that makes you serve without expecting recognition, give without calculating return, invest in people who may never be able to pay you back. Think of practical examples. It's that couple who decides not to abandon the marriage at the first serious crisis, but to work together to rebuild what was broken. It's that father who invests quality time with the children, even arriving exhausted from work. It's that leader who develops their team, even knowing that one day they might become their competitors. This is the type of love God seeks as fruit. Love that costs, that transforms, that leaves a permanent mark on the world. Justice as spiritual fruit isn't internet self-righteousness, isn't performative militancy, isn't social media tits. Practical commitment to what's right even when no one is looking, even when it would be more profitable to do wrong, even when everyone around is cutting corners. It's that businessman who pays fair wages even when he could pay less and profit more. It's that student who refuses to cheat on the test even seeing half the class cheating. That employee who returns the incorrect change, the cashier gave too much. It's that citizen who pays taxes honestly, even knowing many evade them. Does it seem silly? Does it seem insignificant? But it's exactly in these small daily decisions that the fruit of justice manifests, too. And when you multiply these small just decisions by years, by decades, they build a solid reputation, trustworthy character, a life that is genuine light in a world full of shadows. God heard your prayer when you asked to be used powerfully. And the answer may be in these just choices that no one applauds, but that build the solid foundation on which great things are built. Good works complete the picture of spiritual fruitfulness. But attention, they're not works to earn salvation. They're works that naturally spring from those who have already been saved by grace. It's the difference between working to be accepted and working because you've already been accepted. It's like that child who cleans their room not to earn their parents' love, but because they already know they're loved and want to honor that love. These are practical good works. Visiting that church brother who's hospitalized, preparing a meal for that family who just lost a loved one, mentoring that confused young person who needs direction. Using your professional skills to bless those who can't pay for them. Dedicating volunteer time to that social project that truly transforms lives. Opening your home to welcome someone going through crisis. Investing financially in causes that matter to God's kingdom. Faith in Jesus Christ that doesn't produce this type of fruit isn't genuine faith. It's just intellectual assent to correct doctrines. James was direct to the point. Faith without works is dead. And when you understand that heaven is silent but God is working, through your consecrated hands, through your time invested wisely, through your resources shared generously, you realize that fruitfulness is uncomplex theological mystery. It's simple obedience that transforms the world around you, one decision at a time. The central message, mercy, with limits and fruitful life when you put all the pieces of this parable together. When you look at the complete story from above, the central message shines with crystal clarity. God is incredibly merciful, but His mercy isn't a blank check for eternal spiritual mediocrity. There is divine patience, but it operates within wise limits. There is abundant grace, but it was designed to empower us for transformation, not to validate our stagnation. It's like that exceptional teacher who gives you multiple chances to turn in late work. offers tutoring sessions after hours, simplifies the explanation in 1,000 different ways, but at the end of the semester has to put a grade on the report card based on what you actually produced. Their mercy created every possible opportunity for your success, but can't substitute your responsibility to study, to make an effort, to deliver results. And this tension between mercy and responsibility is uncontradictory. It's his perfect balance between love that offers everything and justice that demands response. Fruitful life isn't optional in God's kingdom. It's the very essence of what it means to be spiritually alive. Think about it. A tree that doesn't bear fruit isn't just having a bad day. It's failing at the fundamental purpose of its existence. A fig tree exists to produce figs, period. It can have beautiful leaves, strong trunk, deep roots, but if it has no figs, it's not fulfilling its function. Thus, we were created in God's image to reflect His character, to manifest His love, to extend His kingdom through our transformed lives. When we don't do this, when we live barren Christian lives, we not just being mediocre, we betraying the very spiritual DNA that was implanted in us. God sustained me through so many storms, not for me to become a display window Christian, but for me to become an instrument of transformation in the world. Every blessing you receive, every deliverance you experience, every answered prayer you witness is for you to accumulate cool experiences to tell at the cell. Group it's to empower you to bear even more fruits. This parable's message directly confronts that consumerist mentality that has infected so much of modern Christianity. You know, that posture of going to church to receive blessing, to be ministered to gain something, but never to give, never to serve, never to become a channel of blessing to others. It's exactly the opposite of what Jesus teaches here. The fig tree doesn't exist to consume water and nutrients. It exists to produce fruit that feeds others. You were unsaved just to secure your little spot in heaven. You were saved to become salt and light here on earth. And when you understand this, when this truth really penetrates deep into your heart, everything changes. You stop measuring spirituality by how many verses you've memorized and start measuring by how many lives you've positively impacted. You stop counting how many services you've attended and start counting how many times you were Jesus' hands and feet to someone in need. You stop accumulating theological knowledge as a trophy and start applying that knowledge to transform your family, your work, your community. The limit of mercy isn't cruelty, it's wisdom. It's God recognizing that there is a point where continuing to tolerate barrenness becomes injustice to all the rest of creation. When you are not alone, God is with you, offering all the tools for fruitfulness. But you consciously choose to remain unproductive. There comes a time when divine patience needs to give way to divine justice. And you know what's the scariest part? We can be so accustomed to grace that we forget it has purpose. We can be so comfortable in mercy that we forget it aims at transformation. 2. It's like that athlete who has the best coach in the world, access to the best training center, perfect nutrition, but never competes because they're too comfortable just receiving all these benefits without producing results. Eventually, the coach will need to give that spot to someone who will truly honor it with performance. God, being the perfect manager of His vineyard, operates with the same principle: abundant mercy, multiple opportunities, generous resources, but clear expectation that all this will result in fruit. The final message is simultaneously encouraging and challenging. You have everything you need to bear fruit. God has already done His part and continues doing it. Now, remains the most important question of all. Are you going to respond with real transformation, or will you continue being just a beautiful fig tree that does unfulfill its purpose? Conclusion. So, we've reached the end of this journey through the parable of the barren fig tree. But in reality, this isn't the end. It's the beginning of the most important part, your response. Because look, you may have absorbed every word of this teaching, may have been moved at various moments, may even have agreed with everything that was said. But if this doesn't leave your head and descend to your heart, if it doesn't transform the way you live Monday morning, then it was just more content, consumed and forgotten. And honestly, you don't have that luxury. None of us do. The clock is ticking. The season of grace the Vindresa negotiated isn't eternal. God sustained me up to here, not for me to remain the same, but for me to become everything He dreamed when He created me. And the same goes for you. Let me ask you some direct questions. The kind that cut through the fat and go straight to the bone. What specifically is going to change in your life from now on? Don't give me a generic answer like ILL be more faithful or ILL seek God more. That's too vague. It's too easy to escape responsibility. I want to know, what's that broken relationship you're going to take initiative to restore this week? What's that destructive habit you're going to truly abandon? Not just reduce or control, but completely exterminate from your routine. Who's that person who needs to hear from you? A genuine request for forgiveness or a sincere word of encouragement? What's that talent God gave you that you've buried out of fear, laziness, thinking you're not good enough, but that now you're going to unearth and put to work in the kingdom? These are the questions that separate fig trees that will bear fruit from fig trees that will be cut down. Look, I know it's scary. I know real change is frightening, that leaving the spiritual comfort zone seems risky, that you might be thinking, what if I try and fail again? But let me tell you something. The biggest risk isn't trying and failing. It's not trying and remaining barren until God's patience reaches its limit. You are not alone. God is with you on this journey of transformation. Faith in Jesus Christ isn't a crutch to keep limping, it's power to start running. When everything seemed lost in your life, when you thought there was no way out, it was exactly there that God heard your prayer and began to work. But His work is only completed when you cooperate, when you allow Him to dig deep, to fertilize generously, to transform radically. The tears God sees and be the end of the story. They need to be the beginning of the interior revolution that will make you a completely different person. So here's the final challenge, the moment of decision that can literally change the course of your existence. Choose today, right now, not tomorrow, not after that difficult situation passes, not when you feel more prepared. Now, choose to leave barrenness and enter fruitfulness. Write it on paper, type it in your phone, record an audio to yourself, if that helps. But define clearly what are the 3 specific fruits you're going to start producing from today. It could be forgiving that person who hurt you deeply. It could be dedicating 1 hour per week to mentor someone younger in the faith. It could be setting aside a specific percentage of your income to invest in causes that matter to the kingdom. It could be lovingly confronting that family member who's destroying themselves. It could be restoring intimacy in the marriage you've let grow cold. It could be giving up for good, that secret vice that has been stealing your peace and spiritual authority. Whatever it is, define it, commit to it, and start today. Because when God speaks to the heart about fruitfulness, He's not joking, He's not suggesting, He's summoning. And if you genuinely apply everything you've learned here, if you let this parable transform not just your understanding, but to action, I guarantee you, a year from now you'll look back and won't recognize yourself. You'll be so different. And that, my friend, is the only adequate response to the absurd grace God has poured out on you. Now, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue on this learning journey with us, because there's much more liberating truth coming. And whoa, I don't want to miss any of these messages that can literally save your spiritual life from premature cutting. The decision is yours. The time is now. The fruit is waiting to be born. Are you going to just watch or will you act?